This video is on the shadow library. In our last video, you learned how to add lights, and you can add those lights in different areas, at different warmths. You can see we use a nice 3000 on this particular photo. It looks really great on this tree. There's some moonlighting in different areas. You can choose, whether or not you want to show a fixture or not. There's also a select all button if you need to select everything at the same time and change the warmth on everything all at once. So that is always going to be an option for you as well to make sure it looks just the right way. When you're done selecting, just unselect select all to get back to just one at a time. But let's talk about shadows, because shadows are really a huge part of the artistry of landscape lighting. We want it to look really beautiful and have really great effects that emphasize the depth of the light and shadow and how they play with each other. So in order to do that, we installed a shadow library for you all with lots of different options. So here's a little bit on how to use them and what might work best for one thing or another. You'll definitely want to explore the different shadows because some of them are kind of in cross buttons here. So we have some tree sort of images that are under leaf foliage. And then we have your traditional trees and pine trees that, are also in regular trees as well. So there's a lot to look at. We have water textures, wall vines, wood textures, lots of different things. But let's take a look at this photo and see what we can do to create the effects that we want to. One of my favorite shadows is leaf foliage 9 when it comes to trees like this. You will be able to select the type of shadow you want. You'll see an opacity slider here. That means how light or dark the shadow is. So I can just click where I want, and you'll see it's just kind of sitting next to things. You'll be able to rotate by clicking on that top square and sliding it. You'll want to make your shadows, depending on where they are, really skinny or longer, more exaggerated, however you need to. So in this case, I always say you should start where the shadow begins, right? So shadows come out from the stem of the item that they are shadowing. So that's what we did here. We placed it, turned it sideways, and are placing it right where that shadow would normally come out. From there, we can make it skinnier, so it almost feels like it's sitting flat on the ground. And then you can extend out the length, give it an exaggeration. And now you can see that it really does feel like the right kind of shadow for this particular photo, even though it's not the exact shadow of this particular tree. We're just trying to show them that effect. That opacity, you can lighten it or you can darken it. You want to go darker the closer you are to your light source, and lighter the further you are from that light source. So in this case, you can just play with it a little bit till it feels just about right. And so what we end up with now is this really great shadow, and it feels and kind of looks the right way. It fades out where we need it to fade out, and it really has that dappling effect that we're hoping for, that you're going to get from moon lighting. So great way to add something of this type of texture. You'll also have other options like for different types of leaves. So you might need to deepen the look of foliage that is already existing. For example, on this particular tree, you can see that there's all this green foliage. It looks kind of weird and transparent, and the leaves themselves are going to have shadows. So you can select whatever kind of shadows you want. This is kind of what these look like just for reference. And then you can make that smaller, bigger, rotate it, put it wherever you need to put it. And what I like about this is it gives me the opportunity to really add some shadow work and give those leaves a whole new depth than you thought existed. So I'll show you what this looks like here. You can see here, we just added that shadow. This is without it. You can almost see through to the wall behind it. And when we add that in, it just gives it a whole different depth of feeling for that foliage. So it's really easy to do. It doesn't have to be the exact same shape. It just has to kind of look like it blends a little bit. And this is a great thing to do when, especially if you have lights shining over leaves and things like that. You can do that same kind of shadow work. In addition to that, you'll have other options like for dappling and things like that, where it might need to appear on the ground. Maybe the whole point of it is to create kind of a shadow work of leaves on the ground. And if you're doing that, then just like we did before, where we made it skinnier so it fits on the ground, and then longer or wider, you can still create that dappling effect, lighten up that shadow a little bit, however you need to make it look the right way, and have that same kind of dappling that you would on the ground, whether it be on the tree, on the ground, behind a tree. If you're doing a shadow behind something, you can add it there as well. So shadows that appear behind items tend to be a little less exaggerated than when they're stretched out on the ground. So for, this is not quite the right one for this, but let's say you needed to reverse the direction. You can always flip it that way. And let's say that this was, there was another plant behind here and it was this shadow, and you can make that longer, darker, whatever you needed to, and place it on the wall as well. So lots we can do there. In this particular case, one of my favorite things to do, especially for this photo, is when you have a lot of foresty kind of background, I usually like to add a little bit of depth to it by adding some shadows right over where those trees are. It kind of gives the sense that there's a bunch of trees in the area, which there are. And at night, they're going to look a little deeper and darker than they do right now. So I find it to be a little easier to just give it a little bit of depth that way. And then, you can see I'm just hitting that duplicate button, which is really easy to do. And then on the ground, it might be that they show a little bit, shadowing out from where they were here. And we would lighten that up because it's not going to be quite as dark. You're going to exaggerate it out, rotate it so that the shadow is at that 45-degree angle. And you can see that we can really make it look the right way. And once you have one set, it's really easy to just duplicate and add some more. Like that. So now you have that look and feel as if the shadows are kind of overlapping on the ground a little bit. And now you have shadows that are appearing here from maybe a light source coming from the behind in this direction. We had the one that we had placed earlier to show dappling effects and show you guys that. We have some that you can deepen all these leaves with. But sometimes it's something that is not a natural element, like a wood texture, a wall texture, something of that sort. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that as well. So on the wood texture, you can still apply a wood texture really well to a tree. So for example, this shadow would be a great one to deepen the overall look of the wood on this tree. So it's got kind of that knotty, grainy look that you're going to find on bark. And sometimes that's the purpose, right? You want to really deepen the look of that grain, make it look a certain way. If you're shining something up on a wall, I'm going to just duplicate this and show it right on the wall so I can give you guys an example of what that might look like. Let's say we're shining on this part of the wall, and I'm just going to make this a little wider and a little shorter. And we'll add a little bit more intensity to it. There we go. So let's say, for example, you needed to show some wall texture, and maybe it is a stone wall or just a brick wall. You can use that wall texture button and find the one that is basically closest to what you're going to need. Select that and then go ahead and add your shadow. From there, you can just resize it to the size you need, height-wise, depth-wise, all that kind of stuff. Make it, as close as you can. And then again, the closer we are to the bottom, the darker we can go on the opacity. Then we can add another one, layer it right on top, and lighten that just a bit. Why are we doing that? That's because as we get further away from our light source, our shadows are not quite as deep anymore. So now we have this really great grainy kind of wall, and it looks like grain now. It looks like that's a stone wall. Is it actually a stone wall? No, we just kind of showed you that as an example. But if you have a stone wall or a brick wall, or any of the wall textures that you're going to see here, this is a great way to really deepen the look, show off that texturing that you may be trying to show off, and get it to look the way you want it to look. If you have an option that maybe includes water, that's going to be another option to add some water shadows. So let's take a look at, see if we can find an option that has maybe some water shadows in it. So we're going to call this project Pool. A lot of you will be installing underwater options, especially if you do a lot of RGB lighting around pool areas and that sort of thing. Let's look at this one and open it up really quickly. We'll save it. Here we go. Hit save. So we're going to do the same thing here that we did with some of the other ones. I'm just going to kind of put that off to the side, hit apply. And now let's bring down that lighting and swap out that background for the dark night. And when we add our lights, right, you're probably going to pick something that, it's going to work for wherever that is that you need. It's cascading across the water. It has a certain look to it. But in addition to that, you're also wanting to create an effect of that shadow work. So let's look at our shadows and look at water texture shadows. These are really great examples of different water texture shadows to make it look the way you want it to, especially if you're near an area with a little bit more fast moving water. So you can stretch that out, turn it sideways, do whatever you need to do with it. And then we're going to lighten it up and just kind of make it look the way we want it to look. So I'm just lining it up with the water's edge and stretching that out just like that. And what we're going to do is we're just going to let it fade, right? This is a little too dark, but we can lighten that up. And this is just an example. We can lighten that up and it has that look of the shadows in the water, especially when you have churning water or anything like that. It's just a great way to create that effect should you need it. And that's how our shadow library looks.